Okay, so we're back for the rest of lesson 3.2, part 1. So if you read that over, you could see that we have 3 things that are going to contribute to the cost of the rental. We have to pay for gas. When you rent the car, it comes with a full tank of gas. Okay, so here's your gas tank. It's full. You drive a certain amount, and so you use up this much, it goes down to here. That's the part you have to fill back up again because you have to return it with a full tank. So you really are only paying for whatever you used. So gas plus there's a rental fee plus there's tax. So if you notice in there, all those things were mentioned. Okay. Now, as I said, the information we want to remember for this is that gas is still $3.50 a gallon. The rental car still gets 40 miles to the gallon, 40 miles per gallon. The length of the trip, if you notice in number 4, and this is something that usually if we're in class, some of the groups miss it first, is that in number 4 it says to calculate her cost of driving a rental car for a round trip. Okay, so there and back. In the little bullets, it says the length of the trip one way is 193 miles. So if it's 193 miles one way, we have to double that for a round trip. It's going to be 386 miles. Some other information is the price of the rental car is $98.98, and there's 15.3% tax. Okay, so we need to figure out each of these portions of the cost. So gas is going to be very similar to what we did before. The only difference is the number of miles. All right, so I'd like you to pause the video and try to figure out the gas price on your own. I'll get you started, right? We have to start with something that's money because we're trying to find money, and it's going to be 3 conversion factors again. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, look back at what we did at the last problem, and go ahead and try to figure out the gas price. Okay, so hopefully you did it and you thought about the fact that in this case, the only thing that changed was the mileage from that second one we did in the last problem. So now it's 386 miles. Again, over 1. I kind of set this up quickly, but we went through the very same setup before. We can see that our units are canceling out. We just have dollars left. When we multiply this across and then divide, we would get at the top, let's see, 350 times 386 is 1351 over 40. And when we divide that, we're going to find out that the gas cost is $33.78. Again, we're always rounding to the nearest penny. Okay, so this is the cost of gas, $33.78. All right, the rental fee is $98.98, right? They already told us that. That's how much you're going to pay to rent that vehicle. Then we also need to find tax. So we have 15.3% tax. Think back to when we did percents earlier in the semester, in Module 1. What we're really saying here is we want to find out what is 15.3% of 98.98, right? We want to know what 15.3% of this is, and that's going to be the chunk of it that's the tax. So a couple things to remember. Whenever we have of with percents, decimals, or fractions, that means to multiply. So I'm going to be multiplying 2 things. One of those things is the $98.98. The other thing is my percentage. But remember, we always write percentage as a decimal when we're working with it. So I can either think about that I'm dividing by 100 or I'm moving the decimal point over 2 places to the left. Right? 15%, let's forget about the 3 for a second. 15% is 15 hundredths. 15 out of 100 is what 15% means. So we can see the correlation there. So when I multiply 0.153 times 98.98, I'm going to get $15.14. That is what my tax is going to be. Okay, so my 3 parts to this cost are the gas, the rental fee, and the tax. When I add those up, I find that the cost to rent a car for Jenna's trip, this particular trip, is going to be $147.90. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is I'd like you to pause the video for a minute, just look back over your work, okay? Make sure you understand how we got each of those 3 parts. Then when you understand it, when you could do it again, then come back and we'll look at the cost of her driving her own car. Okay, so now we're going to look at the cost of her driving her own car for this trip. So I'm going to take this out. I'm going to leave that total up there just so we can kind of compare them at the end. So let's think about the cost of her own car. So if we look at this now, one thing that she has to pay for is gas again. If you look at those bullets, she also has to pay maintenance costs. So let's think about that for a minute. Okay, let's look at, for example, the oil change. So it says she has to pay for oil and fluid changes $40 every 3,000 miles. Now, she's not traveling 3,000 miles. She's traveling 386 miles. So when she gets home from this trip, it's not like she's going to have to run out and pay $40 for an oil change, okay? But if you think about this, let's say you get an oil change here, okay? Now we know we have 3,000 miles until she needs a new oil change, and it's going to cost her $40, okay? That doesn't mean that, you know, these miles in here don't count toward that, though, right? I mean, essentially, what you could do is you could say, okay, if 3,000 miles costs me $40, then every mile along in there is going to cost me a few cents, right? So every time you drove a mile, you could figure out how many cents that mile was going to cost you, put it in a little jar, and then by the time you got to 3,000 miles, you'd have $40 in your jar, right? These miles here contribute to needing an oil change, even though really we don't have to pay for one every single time we drive. So in that maintenance cost section, general maintenance, tires, and repairs, again, we're not going to have to pay for all of those just based on this little trip, but this little trip contributes toward them. So we're basically saying, how much did this little trip contribute toward that $40? Right? Every time you go drive your car, you're a little closer to needing an oil change, a little closer to needing new tires, right? A little closer to needing a repair of some kind. So the cost of owning the car, or of her own car, is gas, plus maintenance, plus tires, plus repair. Okay, so everything over here is the same as last time. That's not true. Some of the stuff is the same as last time. So this is going to be 22 miles per gallon now for her car. Same trip, same price of gas, and then the other information, we don't have the fee or the tax. We know that the maintenance repair costs, or the maintenance costs for oil and fluid, is $40 every 3,000 miles. The tires are $920 every 50,000 miles. And general repairs on average for this kind of vehicle are going to cost her $328 per year, and this is based on driving 15,000 miles. Okay, so those will all help us figure out those costs. So first, we want to figure out the gas price. We've done this 3 or 4 times now. Okay, so go ahead and first pause the video, and I want you to figure out what the gas price is. Again, it's going to be very similar to what we did for the rental, but it's a different number of miles per gallon. It's not going to be the same as what we did in question number 3, because remember that was a different number of miles, but it's going to be the same setup. Okay, so go ahead and pause the video, try to set up the gas price, and then come back. Okay, so again, we wanted our answer to be in dollars. So I start out with $3.50 for 1 gallon. I want something with gallons after that in the numerator, so it will cancel out. So I'm going to put 1 gallon for every 22 miles. And then again over here I put 386 miles over 1. My gallons cancel out. My miles cancel out. I'm left with just dollars. When I multiply across the top and across the bottom and round to the nearest penny, I'm going to get $61.41. So that is my cost for gas. Remember we said that her own car was going to cost close to double of the rental because she has about half of the gas mileage. Okay, I'm going to pause this video because I'm getting close to the amount that I can upload at once to YouTube. So I will stop it and I'll start right back up with the last 3 parts.